My sister's school organized a charity sale. She bought a love letter for 5 yuan and presented it to me like a treasure. Brother, look, the recipient's name is the same as yours. I fell into deep thought as I looked at this love letter from 8 years ago. The signature at the end was Hilda Green. Isn't this my former aloof deskmate, now my aloof boss? Just as I was about to ask for details, a phone call came to our home. A child on the other end of the line was crying heartbrokenly. My aunt is going to kill me. I'll pay 100 yuan. Please return that letter to me quickly. Ding. Story Shots reminds you to click the subscribe button at the bottom right corner to read the full novel. Due to an intern's work mistake, our entire team was criticized. As the team leader, I was scolded the harshest. When I came out of the boss's office dejectedly, the intern was almost in tears. Brother Smith, I'm so sorry. I've dragged you down. I looked at the dark circles under her eyes. We've all been working overtime these past few days due to the high work intensity. And she hasn't rested either. I waved my hand. It's fine. I'm used to being scolded. It doesn't hurt anyway. Is that so? A cool female voice came. The intern was startled. I also stiffened, looking up to see Hilda Green pushing open her office door, slightly frowning at me. An ice beauty face, intimidating just to look at. I forced a smile. No, it's not. Hilda Green stared at me for a few seconds, then closed her office door. While getting water during work, I overheard some interns whispering. The boss is so harsh to Director Smith. Director Smith is so strong-hearted. If it were me, I couldn't take it. I heard Director Smith and the boss were high school classmates. Really? But the boss scolds her old classmate without any mercy. What a devil. I shrugged my shoulders. Who says she isn't? Hilda Green, that person is just a devil. We're not just ordinary high school classmates. We were desk mates for 3 years in high school. She doesn't give me any face at all. Just as I was about to leave, I heard their conversation take a turn. By the way, I heard the boss is engaged. I even saw her fiancé dropping her off at the company a while ago. What? Even someone as cold as Ms. Green has a fiancé? I paused, my fingers unconsciously curling around the cup. Looking towards the office at the end of the corridor, for some reason, I felt a dull ache in my heart. After a month of hard work, the project finally made significant progress. The company gave us a 5-day holiday. The interns were so excited they almost cried. I politely declined their dinner invitation, went home to pack, and drove straight back to my hometown. I hadn't been back for half a year. Fortunately, my hometown isn't far from where I work, just over 4 hours by car. It was already late at night when I got home. My sudden return startled my mom, who happily went to make my bed, while my dad hummed a tune as he went to make me a late-night snack. After putting away my luggage, I gently pushed open the door of a small room. In the light from the living room, I saw a little girl buried in her blanket, sleeping peacefully and adorably. Vicky Smith was the product of my parents' momentary carelessness when I was in high school. At first, I was also very uncomfortable with suddenly having such a young sister. But as Vicky grew up, she became more and more adorable, perfectly inheriting my mom's patience and my dad's intelligence. And she's very attached to me, always thinking of me first when she gets something good. Early the next morning, I heard some movement and groggily opened my eyes to see Vicky leaning on the edge of my bed. Her eyes were bright, staring at me without blinking. Brother, you're back. Yes. I closed my eyes again. Be good. Brother needs to sleep a bit more. Okay. I'm going to school now. I'll bring you a gift when I come back. I mumbled a response. As Vicky tiptoed out, she even carefully closed the door for me. This little girl, she's quite thoughtful. Seems like she has quite a bit of pocket money. She can even bring me gifts? I'm a bit excited. When I got up, it was almost 11 o'clock. Vicky had been picked up from school by Dad. Mom and Dad asked me to watch her for a while. Then they went to the supermarket to buy groceries. As soon as Mom and Dad left, Vicky eagerly pulled something out of her school bag and mysteriously came up to me. Brother, guess what gift I brought you? How could I possibly guess? Just as I was about to say something random, She couldn't hold back anymore and held up an envelope in front of me. "Brother, look, it has your name written on it." I was stunned for a moment and took the letter. The paper had yellowed a bit. It looked like it was from several years ago. "To Calvin Smith" was written on the front of the envelope. How could such an uncommon name be a coincidence? Vicky chattered on. "Our school held a charity sale today. We brought things from home that we don't use anymore to school, and classmates could buy them for any price. The money earned will be donated to Hope Primary School. My deskmate brought a lot of things, old books and stationery. I found this letter in a book and bought it for 5 yuan. Vicky looked at me expectantly. "Brother, do you like it?" My first reaction was that it must be a name coincidence. From childhood to adulthood, I was never considered handsome in my class. I always wore thick glasses and had an introverted, gloomy personality. I didn't even know how to respond when others tried to talk to me. So no girl had ever given me a love letter. I held this letter, feeling a bit at a loss. Vicky Smith was still urging me. "Brother, open it quickly and take a look. This doesn't seem right." After all, it belonged to someone else, especially since it was a private love letter. But I worked hard to find this and spent a whole week's allowance to buy it. With a child's impatience, she took the letter from my hand and opened it in no time. Then she handed it back to me. "Brother, read it to me." My classmate said it's from his aunt's treasure box, which is full of good stuff, so this must be good too. I was about to refuse, but my peripheral vision caught the signature at the bottom of the letter. The handwriting was neat and graceful, Hilda Green. It was like a thunderbolt struck my mind. I was stunned for several seconds before my gaze stiffly moved up to read the contents of the letter. "Calvin Smith, this is our 3rd year as desk mates." I quickly covered the letter, my face burning red. My sister was still urging, "Brother, read it quickly. I want to hear it too." After sending my sister away, I clutched the envelope and rushed into my room. I opened the window and let the breeze blow for a while, but my heart still couldn't calm down. I looked at the letter again. I was absolutely certain that this was written by Hilda Green. After all, my handwriting in high school was like chicken scratch, and the Chinese teacher couldn't stand it anymore. She gave me Hilda Green's assignments to use as a copybook for an entire semester. I could recognize her handwriting even if it were burned to ashes. But why? How could Hilda Green have liked me in high school? My thoughts drifted far away, and I remembered my first meeting with Hilda Green at the beginning of our first year of high school. At that time, I went alone from a small town to attend first high school in the city. I carried a large snakeskin bag that could hold everything. When I reached the school gate, I couldn't carry it anymore, so I just dragged it along. But I overestimated the quality of the snakeskin bag. Under the intense friction with the ground, the snakeskin bag broke. I walked quite a distance before I realized the weight felt off. I turned around and saw my belongings scattered all along the way. Books, stationery, toiletries, lunchbox. The students around were all looking at me, and laughter kept coming. "Wow! A country bumpkin has come to the city. That snakeskin bag is awesome." I crouched down with a red face, picking up my things along the way. I hadn't picked up much when I bumped right into a girl coming from the opposite direction. The girl was carrying a backpack, had a cold and beautiful appearance, wore a ponytail and was tall. She was holding a pile of miscellaneous items and said calmly, "I've picked up everything in front." Looking over my shoulder, she glanced at the snakeskin bag on the ground. "Do you have any other bags?" I shook my head embarrassedly, hardly daring to look up at her. She thought for a moment, took out a few books from her backpack, and handed the bag to me. "You can use this for now." Confused, I took the girl's white backpack and looked up blankly. "How will I return it to you?" The boy pointed to the book I had just picked up. "Aren't you also in class 3, year 1? I was stunned and instinctively looked at her book. The cover of the book had her class and name on it. Class 3, year 1, Hilda Green. If we're talking about liking someone, I actually liked her first. Unfortunately, this secret crush ended without a trace for various reasons. After graduating from university, I started an internship at an obscure small company. but unexpectedly met her again. That's when I realized that this small company was actually founded by her. Look, the gap between people just keeps getting bigger and bigger. While I was still figuring out how to support myself, Hilda Green had already started her own business and joined the upper class. So, why on earth did this love letter come into existence? I racked my brains but couldn't figure out the reason. Then I wondered, could Hilda Green still? As I thought about this, my heart involuntarily started beating faster, but before I could think it through, I suddenly remembered the gossip I had overheard from the interns in the break room a while ago. Hilda Green might already have a fiancé, so this love letter, whether true or false, could only become a thing of the past. As I was feeling melancholy, I heard Vicky Smith's angry voice from outside the door. "Zeb Johnson, you're not keeping your word. I won't play with you anymore." I opened the door to look and saw Vicky Smith hugging her children's watch, talking on the phone. It must have been her classmate on the other end. Hearing her words, they burst into tears. "I'm begging you, please give that letter back to me. My aunt suddenly came back today and found out I messed with her stuff. She almost scolded me to death. I'll give you 100 yuan. No, I'll give you all my New Year's money. Please give the letter back to me." Okay. Perhaps because they were crying so pitifully, Vicky Smith pouted, not saying anything for a while. She hesitated for a long time, while the other side continued to plead. "All right, I'll go talk to my brother about it." She looked very troubled. "This was a gift I gave him. Thank you so much." The boy sighed in relief, then suddenly added, "Oh, by the way, my aunt should be arriving at your place soon. She asked for your address and left about half an hour ago. You can just give her the letter directly." I jolted, quickly darting out of the room. Holding Vicky Smith's phone watch, I asked urgently, "Little one, what's your aunt's name?" The boy stammered in response, "Green, Hilda Green." Ding dong. At that moment, the doorbell rang. I froze for a second. Quickly, I peeked through the peephole. Outside, Hilda Green was waiting patiently, dressed in casual wear with her hair down. Though she wore no makeup, it couldn't hide her beauty. She looked a bit more approachable. But that wasn't the point. The point was, if I opened the door now, things would become extremely awkward between us. How would we work together at the company after this? I turned and exchanged a glance with Vicky Smith. Just as she was about to speak, I quickly covered her mouth. "Be good, go open the door. Don't say your brother is home, and don't say who your brother is." I ran into the room, restored the letter, then handed it to Vicky Smith. "Give the letter back to her, then close the door." At this point, manners didn't matter anymore. Vicky Smith nodded. After I hid in the room, she ran to open the door. When the door opened, Hilda Green was about to speak but couldn't see anyone. She paused, then looked down to see a little girl holding an envelope and looking up at her. "Hello, are you Zeb Johnson's aunt? This is yours." "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to take your things." The girl's expression was pitiful, and Hilda Green's furrowed brow unconsciously relaxed. "It's okay. Zeb Johnson sold this to you. It's his fault." She glanced at the envelope and asked, "Did you open it?" The marks were quite obvious. Vicky Smith's eyes darted around, and she quickly said, "I'm sorry, Auntie. I was just so curious. I opened it and looked, but I don't know many words, so I didn't understand." Hilda Green smiled and said nothing more. She handed Vicky Smith a red envelope, a belated New Year's red packet. "I hope you make progress in your studies." She didn't stay long and left quickly. After closing the door, I came out of the room. Vicky Smith gave me an okay sign. Mission accomplished. As the last day of the holiday ended, I hurried back to the city where I work. I was organizing the materials needed for the next day's meeting when I realized an important document was left at the company. Some data needed to be verified, and there wouldn't be enough time to do it the next day. I only hesitated for a few seconds before grabbing my car keys and heading downstairs. My apartment wasn't far from the company, just a 10-minute drive. It was a 20-story office building, with our company on the top floor. Standing at the bottom, I was surprised to see lights on at the top floor. The security guard, returning from his patrol, saw me. "Who's there?" "Brother Bailey," I greeted him. "Oh, it's you." Brother Bailey smiled. I'd been working here for several years and was a familiar face to them. I asked him, "It's so late. Is someone still on the top floor?" Brother Bailey looked up. "I just came down from there. It's your CEO, Green." He clicked his tongue. "She came in the morning and has been working all day. Such a workaholic." I entered the company and got the document, quietly preparing to leave when I caught a glimpse of light spilling from the office at the end of the hall. After a moment's thought, I changed direction and headed that way. Just as I was about to knock, I saw the scene inside through the partially open blinds. My raised hand froze instantly. Hilda Green was lying on the black leather sofa in the office, her long legs slightly curled. She wore a crisp white shirt, the top 2 buttons undone, revealing a glimpse of her delicate collarbone. I paused, then gently pushed the door open, careful not to disturb her. Hilda Green's brows were slightly furrowed, finding no peace even in sleep. As far as I could remember, she always seemed to be like this. Those beautiful eyes and brows never seemed to relax. But I remembered that Hilda Green had once shown a very gentle side. It was during the 2nd semester of our sophomore year in high school. We had been desk mates for a year. She was the math class representative, and I was the biology class representative. That afternoon, the teacher asked us to go to the print shop at the school gate to pick up some test papers. Just as we left the school gate, I ran into my grandmother who had come to see me. She was delighted. "Calvin, I was wondering how to get in." Our school didn't usually allow outsiders to enter. She had taken a long bus ride from her small town, transferring several times, only to see me right at the gate. She held my hand, chattering away about many things. Hilda Green stood waiting for me not far away. Grandmother asked me, "Calvin, did you bring the rice cakes I asked you to share with your classmates last week? Did they like them?" I smiled. "Yes, they all said your cooking is great." "That's wonderful." Grandmother's face creased with joy. But I had lied. I had eaten all those rice cakes by myself. At first, I shared them with my roommates, but accidentally saw them throwing them in the trash. "Dirty stuff, you'll get sick if you eat it," they said. I didn't want my grandmother's hard work to be wasted. And as a teenager in my rebellious phase, I also had my pride. So I ate all the remaining rice cakes by myself. I asked my grandmother to wait for me at the print shop entrance, planning to take her for a meal after I picked up my test papers. But there was a problem with the biology test, so I had to contact the teacher again. When I finally came out after resolving the issue, I saw Hilda Green chatting with my grandmother at the entrance. I heard my grandmother ask her, "Did Calvin share some rice cakes with you?" Hilda was taken aback for a moment, then smiled and said, "Yes, they were delicious." Hearing this, my grandmother became even happier and immediately pulled out a small bag from her handbag, looking hopeful. "Grandma still has some. Would you like more?" Elders are always like this, habitually saving what they consider the best things for the younger generation. For my grandmother, the rice cakes she made by hand were the best thing she could offer for her grandson to share with his classmates. I nervously watched Hilda, but to my surprise, she reached out and took the rice cake, eating it without hesitation. "Thank you, Grandma." Her eyelashes were long, and the sunlight cast a faint shadow under her eyes, softening her usually sharp features. I was stunned. I heard her praising me, saying I was a good student, hardworking, kind-hearted, and had many friends. My grandmother was very happy that day. It was also from that day on that I realized I might like her a little. A crush is a one-person battlefield. I would secretly pay attention to Hilda's every move, imitate her little habits when she was thinking, and even copy her handwriting. Even occasional physical contact during class breaks would make my heart race. And so, I carefully collected these precious moments. Before the summer break of our 2nd year in high school, I planned to confess to Hilda. But during that time, some rumors suddenly started circulating in our class. Rumors about Hilda. I heard her mom and sister were both driven away by her dad, and her dad was jailed 2 years ago for causing trouble while drunk. Really? I always thought Hilda looked gloomy, like the type who might secretly harm others. It's true, I heard criminal genes can be inherited. We should stay away from her in the future. Oh, looks like Hilda won't be able to apply for government jobs in the future. Their tones were full of schadenfreude. I couldn't stand it anymore and turned to glare at them. Someone's just jealous that she's always first in exams while you're stuck being second, right? That person was stunned for a moment, then cursed. What's wrong with you? You're the one with a problem, rabies. I retorted. To be honest, as an introverted person, I rarely argued with others so fiercely. Once I started arguing, I was the one who got red-eyed with anger before the other person could say much. So when Hilda came in behind the teacher, what she saw was my pathetic state of cursing at others with red eyes. The other student and I were sent to stand outside the classroom as punishment. The teacher asked about the reason for our argument. We looked at each other, both choosing to remain silent. He was silent out of guilt. I was afraid that Hilda would be hurt if she heard. My secret crush also ended that summer. The day I mustered up the courage to confess to Hilda was the last day of summer vacation. Following the address I remembered, I found Hilda's home. It was in an old alley with houses close together. There were 2 or 3 people peering at Hilda's house. They're beating the child again. It's such a sin. Shouldn't we try to stop them? What if they seriously hurt her? We can't interfere. Old Yang tried to break it up a few days ago, and that bastard even hit him. I hurriedly approached, and suddenly there was a loud noise from inside the yard. Through the gate, I saw the door being kicked open. Hilda was thrown out. You little brat. A tall man walked out and kicked her directly. You dare to fight back? The man was tall but drunk, swaying a bit. Hilda wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth, got up and lunged at the man, knocking him to the ground with her thin body. Why don't you just die? Why don't you just die? Hilda wrestled with him on the ground. The man, now angrier, hit her harder, cursing. Even if I die, I'll take you with me, you little brat. You think you're grown up now, that your wings are strong? Let me tell you, the blood flowing in your body is mine. You're my daughter. You'll never escape me in this life. Look, you hit just like me. The man laughed almost maniacally. You're my daughter. My daughter. Hilda's raised hand paused, then fell limply. She staggered to her feet, looking down at the man on the ground. The young girl had grown quite tall. Although she still didn't have the strength to protect herself, she bared her sharpest teeth like a young beast. I'm not like you, Hilda said. I'm the top student in the whole school. I have been and I will be. I'll get into the best university, study the best major. I'll make something of myself. I'll take a completely opposite path from you. You and I have never been the same. Her words were like a bomb dropped in my heart. I suddenly understood why Hilda studied so hard. Because she didn't believe in fate. She wanted to change her fate. Looking down at the love letter in my hand, I felt somewhat ashamed. Perhaps I shouldn't have confessed. This might be troublesome for Hilda Green, and a burden for her as well. I called the police, and only after they arrived did I quietly leave that alley. Then I buried my feelings deep in my heart, until the college entrance exam was over. Hilda Green was not only the top scorer in our school that year, but also the highest scoring science student in our city. Flowers and applause were endless. Calls from prestigious universities came one after another. Although I also got into a decent university compared to Hilda Green, it seemed insignificant. The gap was created at that moment. My teenage crush also ended after countless hesitations and indecisions. At the high school graduation ceremony, I stood next to Hilda Green, looking straight ahead, but turned my head towards her. Hilda Green, I wish you a bright future. Hilda Green was stunned for a moment, her voice as clear as ever. Thank you. I wish you a bright future too. With that, our youth came to an end. In the quiet office, I looked at the woman before me. Hilda Green, you've already made a name for yourself, so why aren't you happy? On the coffee table was a half-empty cup of cold coffee, with a few documents scattered beside it. Hilda Green seemed really tired, with obvious dark circles under her eyes. She looked completely off guard. appearing somewhat vulnerable. I stared at her for a few seconds, then picked up her coat that was placed aside and gently draped it over her. But as I was about to let go, my wrist was suddenly grabbed. I was startled and looked up, meeting Hilda Green's gaze directly, my heart skipping a beat. Hilda Green's eyes were initially a bit hazy, but quickly regained clarity. She gripped my wrist tightly, her nails digging into my skin, making me frown slightly. Hilda Green loosened her grip and said in a slightly hoarse voice, "Why are you here?" I stepped back a bit and replied, "I came back to the company to get a document. Saw the light on here, so I came in to check." Hilda Green glanced at the coat that had slipped onto her legs, remained silent for 2 seconds, then got up to pour a glass of water. I was about to quietly slip out when I heard Hilda Green call my name. I stopped. "Ms. Green, is there anything else?" She looked at me, and after a few seconds, she said, "I'm sorry for my bad attitude towards you in front of the interns earlier." I didn't expect her to suddenly apologize to me. I quickly said, "It's all right. There really was a problem with our team. It's my responsibility. Ms. Green, please don't worry about it." Hilda Green paused. "You." For some reason, I felt a bit nervous. Just as my heart was about to tighten, I heard her change the subject. "You should head back early. Drive carefully on your way home." "Okay, Ms. Green." I quietly opened the door and left, then let out a long sigh. I worked for 5 consecutive days. After work on Friday, I went back to my apartment and slept like the dead. When I woke up, it was almost 10 o'clock. I picked up my phone and saw that there were several hundred new messages in the intern group chat. The intern Zelda had lost a necklace, a jade Buddha that her mother had specially blessed for her at a temple. It meant a lot to her. She had been looking for it for a long time but couldn't find it, and was asking if anyone had seen it. Could the cleaning lady have picked it up? What if she swept it away as trash? I sent a voice message to comfort her. "Don't worry. Can you be sure about when you lost it? I'll help you check the surveillance footage." Zelda thought carefully. It might have been around 4 or 5 in the afternoon. I felt hot and took off my jacket. Maybe it fell off then. I had access to the surveillance footage and directly opened today's video. I found Zelda's workstation and watched it back and forth several times. Finally, I zoomed in on the image and watched carefully for a long time before I saw something fall from Zelda when she took off her jacket, which was accidentally kicked under the desk by a passing colleague. I breathed a sigh of relief and sent the screenshot to Zelda. Thank you, Brother Smith. I'll get it on Monday. It's nothing. I'm glad it's found." I exited the chat and was about to close the surveillance footage when I accidentally clicked the mouse, and the video jumped to 9 p.m. Hilda Green's figure flashed by. I paused, surprised. Hilda Green was still at work at 9 p.m.? At the same time, I was a bit confused. Hilda Green doesn't pass by this area when leaving the office. Driven by curiosity, I pressed the button, and the surveillance footage jumped forward a few seconds. On the screen, Hilda Green came out from one side, with a clear target, heading straight for my workstation. She paused for 2 seconds at my desk, and after she left, I could clearly see that there were a few white rabbit milk candies on my desk. I widened my eyes and sat up straight in bed. There were candies on my desk almost every day. I thought they were from colleagues who arrived early, and I had been eating them all without any hesitation. Could it be? I hit the keyboard and looked at the surveillance footage from the past few days. I dragged the time to 8 or 9 p.m. Sure enough, I saw Hilda Green again. It had always been her leaving the candies. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The vibration of my phone disrupted my thoughts. I looked at the caller ID and was startled. Why would Hilda Green be calling me at this hour? I pressed the call button, but a strange male voice came from the other end. "Hello? Is this Mr. Calvin Smith?" "Yes, it is. And you are?" "Ms. Green is drunk. You might need to come and pick her up." When I drove to Bamboo Grove Villa, it was already 11 o'clock. At the entrance of the secluded private room, an elegant and handsome man was on the phone. Turning his head to see me, he smiled, said something to the person on the phone, then hung up and came towards me. I froze completely, because I recognized him. Previously, An intern had shared photos of him with Hilda Green in a private group chat. They all said he was Hilda Green's fiancé. I stared at him in a daze. "Mr. Smith, you came so quickly." He pointed inside. "Hilda drank too much. You might have to trouble yourself to take her home." Hilda. How intimate they seemed. For no reason. A surge of jealousy bubbled up inside me. Not showing it on my face, I also smiled. "All right, are you going back together as well?" I was sure they had both been drinking and were using me as a designated driver. But to my surprise, he hesitated. "Go back where?" "Home, of course. My home isn't on the way to Hilda's," he explained. "Besides, my wife is already here to pick me up. Don't worry about me, Miss Smith." "Wife?" I was stunned. Seeing my expression, he also realized. "Who did you think I was?" I laughed awkwardly. "Ms. Green's fiancé." "Ha ha 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 ha." He laughed heartily. "I'm 10 years older than her. You really know how to joke." He extended his hand to me. "Hello. Let me introduce myself. I'm Edmund Jackson, one of Hilda Green's partners." Edmund Jackson was Hilda Green's senior in college and also one of the first people to partner with her to start the company. Later, I left due to family reasons. In recent years, my wife and I have also started a small company. Edmund Jackson said, "Hilda and I have always kept in touch. Today, I arranged a dinner meeting to discuss a project, and she accidentally drank too much." I quickly apologized. "I'm sorry, Mr. Jackson. I misunderstood." "It's all right." Edmund Jackson called over a waiter to help carry Hilda Green into my car. Sitting in the driver's seat, I awkwardly spoke up. Mr. Jackson, do you have Ms. Green's home address?" This time it was Edmund Jackson's turn to be surprised. "You don't have it?" I blinked. "Should I have it?" Edmund Jackson explained. "Aren't you her secretary?" I laughed. "No, I'm not. I'm so sorry. Your number was pinned at the top of her contacts, so I assumed you were her secretary. That's why I called you." Edmund Jackson hurriedly sent me the address. "Be careful on the road." Even after driving quite far, I still felt my heart beating a bit fast. Edmund Jackson's words kept echoing in my mind. Your number was pinned at the top of her contacts. Through the rearview mirror, I glanced at Hilda Green in the back seat. Her face was slightly flushed from drinking. I looked away, but after a few seconds, I couldn't help but look again. This time our eyes met. My hand trembled, causing the car to sway a little. Hilda Green pressed her fingers to her temple, looking a bit uncomfortable, but still managed to smile. "Stop looking at me and focus on driving." "Oh, okay." My heart skipped a beat as I sat up straight, not daring to steal another glance. I should be grateful that Hilda Green wasn't completely drunk. Although her walk was a bit unsteady, she could still make it back home on her own. As soon as Hilda Green got home, she lay down on the sofa. I ran to the kitchen, rummaging around, and finally found a bottle of honey in the empty kitchen. The water I poured was a bit hot. While waiting for it to cool down, I opened my phone to take a look. I found that Edmund Jackson, whom I had just added as a friend, had sent me several WeChat messages. "I thought you looked familiar." I just remembered. I was the one who recruited you into Hilda's company back then. At that time, there were many college graduates applying. Your resume didn't really stand out and was filtered out in the first round. But Hilda saw it and brought it back. She said our company needed someone like you. Looking at it now, her decision back then wasn't bad. You're capable and patient, tolerant of others. With you around, the company's cohesion will be much better. Keep up the good work, young man. There was too much information to process. After digesting it for a while, I replied, "Someone like me?" "Yes," Hilda said, "you're a warm person." I turned to look at the living room. Hilda Green was leaning back on the sofa, her chest rising and falling slightly, her breathing a bit heavy. Drinking too much inevitably leads to discomfort. I quickly mixed the honey water and brought it over. "Ms. Green." I put the honey water on the coffee table and called out softly, "Ms. Green." Hilda Green didn't respond. My heart skipped a beat. Could she have caught a cold? "Hilda Green." I called her name while waving my hand in front of her eyes. Can you hear me? Hilda Green slowly opened her eyes and grabbed my waving hand. She looked up at me, her dark eyes glistening with a watery sheen, as if covered by a thin mist. Calvin Smith. Huh! My heart was racing, but I tried to remain calm as I pulled my hand back. Have some water. I was about to fetch water when Hilda Green grabbed my wrist again. I turned to look, and she had already sat up and wrapped her arms around my waist. I fell back onto the sofa, with Hilda Green's chest burning hot against my back. Even through my shirt, I could feel her rapid heartbeat. Her arms tightly encircled my waist, her chin resting on my side, her voice trembling. Don't go. I won't go. I felt all the blood in my body rushing to my face as Hilda Green's lips barely grazed my arm, sending a shiver through me. I kept trying to hypnotize myself. Hilda Green was drunk, and the actions of a drunk person are inherently illogical and don't mean anything. But Hilda Green's next words made me freeze on the spot. Calvin Smith, you saw it, didn't you? What? The love letter I never sent you 10 years ago. I looked up in shock, not knowing what to say for a moment. In the floor-to-ceiling window opposite, I could see the reflection of Hilda Green and me. We were intimately close, the atmosphere ambiguous. Hilda Green's voice was languid, tinged with drunkenness, her words clear. You know, you're the warmest person I've ever met. She wasn't heartless. She could see when others were kind to her. When she was sick, there was always a thermos full of hot water on her desk. Someone would collect and place the homework she needed to turn in on her desk. There were no snail girls in the class. Oh, but there was a snail boy. It's just that this snail boy was so clumsy at hiding it that anyone could guess. This boy called Calvin Smith was always shy and honest, and the only time he was ever punished to stand was for standing up for her. The way he scolded others with red eyes was quite comical. But that scene stayed with her for many years. In her memory, no one had ever defended her so firmly before. After the college entrance exam, she never managed to give him the love letter she wrote. That day, she had the biggest fight ever with her father. Her father broke her arm, and she smashed her father's head with a brick. The neighbors were so scared they called the police. When they were sent to the hospital, she saw Calvin Smith through the ambulance window. His family was standing at the door of an ice cream shop, each holding an ice cream, laughing and joking. An ordinary family, yet one to be envied. In the window, she could also see her own bruised face. What good was being a good student? Everything was still a mess. She was never aloof. She was just insecure. This insecurity was like a stubborn disease, impossible to get rid of or shake off. Her father had a cerebral hemorrhage in her sophomore year and became a vegetative patient in the hospital. She squeezed out all her spare time to work part-time and earn money, keeping the man alive for year after year. At that time, many people advised her. Let it go, they said. Why save such a terrible person? Hilda Green didn't want to save him either. They persuaded her not to save him. But if she really didn't, they would say she was heartless, that there's no overnight grudge between father and daughter. Indeed, they were of the same blood, both no good. People always love to watch drama unfold. So she was determined to prove that she was different from that man. Until 2 years ago, when the man who had been lying in the hospital bed for 2 years finally couldn't hold on and died that winter. That day, Hilda Green stood by the hospital bed for a long time. From dawn to dusk, there was no sense of satisfaction, nor was there sadness or grief, just relief. She thought, if sunlight were to shine on her now, she would finally not need to hide anymore. All along, the shame that she couldn't show to others was finally gone. When facing you, I was always hesitant, afraid it was too late, yet also afraid the time wasn't right. So I kept putting it off. As I listened to her words, a sense of bitterness welled up in my heart. Her arms around me tightened a bit. My heart started beating faster and faster. I heard her say softly, Calvin Smith, I like you, a confession that came many years late. I was stunned for a long time, feeling my eyes grow hot. So all these years, I wasn't the only one secretly liking someone. Calvin Smith. Hilda Green's voice became clearer, as if the effects of alcohol were starting to wear off. But her embrace didn't change. I heard her say, "Your ears are so red." I nervously tried to gently break free from her. "It's getting late, Ms. Green. You should rest early. I'll head back now." But after just one step, Hilda Green wrapped her arms around my waist again. Her face was pressed against my waist, her palm on my chest. The burning temperature made me instinctively want to escape. "I'm feeling a bit unwell. Will you stay with me a little longer, please?" The drunk Hilda Green was a completely different person from her sober self. I couldn't handle it. She only softly pleaded with me a few times, and I felt weak in the knees. Hilda Green took the opportunity to pull me down to sit, and then climbed onto my lap, straddling me. Her body temperature was scorching, her gaze equally intense. I almost couldn't bear to look her in the eye. "Hilda Green, you're drunk." "I'm not drunk," she said, looking down at me. "I know who you are. I know what I'm doing." Her fingers caressed my cheek, her fingertips slightly hot. I looked up at her, my gaze falling on her lips. A voice in my head was screaming, "Do what you want to do. You're both adults. What are you afraid of? After liking you for so many years, don't I deserve a little reward?" This voice shattered my reason. So I cupped her face and tilted my head up to kiss her. The kiss was brief, and I hastily retreated. But Hilda Green's lips pressed against mine again in the next moment. At first, it was just a gentle touch like a test or a confirmation. Her lips carried a faint scent of alcohol, warm and soft. I felt my breath being taken away, my heart racing so fast it almost leapt out of my chest. Hilda Green's palms cupped my face, deepening the kiss with an irresistible warmth. My rationality was crumbling bit by bit, as if I was falling into a warm ocean. Everything around me became blurry. Feeling her hot breath and lingering kiss, my hands unconsciously wrapped around her waist. Early the next morning, I fled. As I was sneaking out of the apartment building, I was caught red-handed by the security guard on patrol. This was a high-end apartment complex with strict security. The guard looked me up and down. "I've never seen you before. Which unit are you from?" I stammered out Hilda Green's address. "Can you let me go? I have an urgent matter to attend to." Urgently needed to go home and change clothes. The guard checked and said, "That's not right. You're not registered. The owner of this unit is a woman, and..." I panicked. "I'm her boyfriend." "Oh," the guard realized. I breathed a sigh of relief and was about to leave when I heard him say, "Wait a moment. Let me call the owner to confirm." Before I could stop him, he had already dialed the number. "Miss Green, hello?" I was led away by Hilda Green. She had a smile on her lips that made one stare, but still felt shy. "Is it funny?" "Not funny." Hilda Green held my hand and brought me back to the apartment. "Why did you run?" I remained silent. Actually, I was a bit scared, afraid that last night was just a whim for Hilda Green, while I took it seriously. Hilda Green paused, seemingly seeing through my thoughts. She squeezed my hand. "Boyfriend, what do you want for breakfast?" I stared at her in a daze. "What did you call me?" "Boyfriend, of course." Hilda Green leaned in slightly, her face close to mine. Eyes narrowed as she looked at me. "That's what you said yourself. Do you want to take it back?" "Of course not." I turned away, coughing dryly. "I want noodles." Hilda Green's noodle-making skills were quite good. I ate until I burped. Looking up to meet Hilda Green's amused gaze, I glanced at her. "Don't laugh." "Okay." She agreed while laughing. I lowered my head and continued eating. "I bought you some clothes, they'll be delivered soon. After we finish eating, let's go to work together." I was stunned. "We're going together?" "Yes." Hilda Green leaned on the table with both hands, looking down at me, enunciating each word. "From now on, always together." I've always been very curious. How did she discover that I had read that love letter? Vicky Smith and I don't look alike at all, and my family had just moved to the city not long ago, so she couldn't possibly have known it was my home. I've asked Hilda Green many times, but she never told me. She let me guess on my own. I couldn't guess. I really couldn't. Extra little scene. Zeb Johnson held his smartwatch, blinking his eyes. Many voices came from the other side. Be good. Go open the door. Don't say your brother is home. And don't say who your brother is. Return the letter to them. Then close the door. Hello? Are you Zeb Johnson's aunt? This is yours. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to take your things. It's okay. This was sold to you by Zeb Johnson. It's her fault. Did you open it? Huh? It's Auntie's voice. I'm sorry, Auntie. I was really curious and opened it to take a look, but I don't know many characters, so I didn't understand it. Here's a belated New Year's red envelope. Wishing you progress in your studies. What? Auntie actually gave Vicky Smith a red envelope. She didn't give me one when she came back, and even beat me up. Zeb Johnson was so angry. He decided to save the call recording he just heard to confront his aunt.